Hello and welcome back. In the previous video, we talked about the three ways in which interest rates can be interpreted, which was the first learning outcome for this reading. If you haven't seen the previous video, please see it first. In this video, we'll talk about the various components of interest rate. Let's take an example. Suppose you have $1,000 to invest and you have two options. The first one is to invest it in US Treasury bills or T-bills. And the second option is to loan it to an entrepreneur who's starting a new venture. Do you expect both these investment options to have the same rate of return? Of course not, as these two investment options have different risks associated with them, and any sensible investor would want a higher return for a riskier investment. So it is clear that interest rate varies. Now, let's look at the various components of an interest rate. An interest rate is equal to real risk-free interest rate plus the inflation premium plus the default risk premium plus the liquidity premium plus the maturity premium. Now, some or all of these terms may be new to you, so let's try and understand each of these components. Real risk-free interest rate. The real risk-free rate is a theoretical rate that a completely risk-free investment would provide in a single period if there was no inflation. Now, this is the key. We are assuming there is no inflation at all. So, the real risk-free rate basically provides the rates at which a completely risk-free investment would grow in a period if there was no inflation. The closest real-world example would be US Treasury bills or T-bills if we could remove the component of interest rate that compensates for inflation or the inflation premium. Next, let's discuss the inflation premium. The inflation premium is the premium for expected inflation over the duration of the investment. The key word here is expected because nobody can predict the actual inflation. Obviously, the inflation is not zero. You do expect the cost of most things to go up with time, and you don't want your purchasing power to decrease over the period of investment. The inflation premium is supposed to ensure that your purchasing power stays the same. Now, we cannot predict the actual inflation, so expected inflation premium is used. Next, let's talk about the nominal risk-free interest rate. While the real risk-free interest rate is a theoretical concept, nominal risk-free rate, which is the sum of real risk-free rate and the inflation premium, is a real concept. US Treasury bills or T-bills are considered to be representative of nominal risk-free rate. You can see the equation on your screen. This is why when we discussed real risk-free interest rate, we mentioned that if you could take out the inflation component from US Treasury bills, you would get the real risk-free interest rate. Please note that the above relation is an approximate relation. The actual relation is shown on your screen now. Next, let's discuss the default risk premium. As we were discussing before, you don't expect an investment with an entrepreneur to have the same level of risk as US Treasury bill. There is a possibility that the entrepreneur may not be able to return you the promised amount of money at the agreed upon time. There is a risk that the business might not do as well as expected, or worse, it completely fails and you do not get your money back. This is a risk that you are taking when investing money with the entrepreneur, and you would want a premium or an interest rate differential for taking this risk. This premium is called the default risk premium. As you can expect, this risk will vary by the investment, that is the riskiness of the project, as well as the credit worthiness of the borrower. The next premium that we need to discuss is the liquidity premium. Liquidity premium compensates for the potential risk of losing money if the investor needs to get cash urgently. So, if there are a lot of investors and buyers for a specific investment, the liquidity premium will be low. However, if not a lot of investors and buyers are interested in a specific investment, the liquidity premium will be high. Suppose you need cash urgently and you have invested your $1,000 in US Treasury bills. You can easily sell these. However, if you're trying to sell your position with the entrepreneur, chances are that you won't have the same number of interested investors. There is a possibility that you won't be able to sell your position in the entrepreneur's business at a fair value. The liquidity premium is supposed to offset not only the cost associated with selling an investment, but also the loss because of not receiving a fair price. Finally, let's discuss maturity premium. Maturity premium compensates for the potential of interest rates to change during the life of an investment. Let's say you have decided to invest your $1,000 in a particular investment, and the only decision you have to make is if you want to invest it for 1 year or 5 years. Will you expect to get the same interest rate? No. When you invest your money for 5 years at a fixed rate, you cannot change the interest rate for 5 years. What if the market rate for the investment goes up in this time period? Even if your interest rate is tied to a reference rate like LIBOR, that is, you are earning a certain percentage more than the prevailing LIBOR per period, you still cannot change the spread, that is, the percent above LIBOR you're earning. For example, let's say you have made an investment in a security at LIBOR plus 1%. This means you will be earning 1% higher than the LIBOR every period. So if the LIBOR rises up, your earnings increase and vice versa. However, as you have fixed your spread at 1% above the LIBOR, your earnings will always be 1% more than LIBOR. As a result, you won't be able to change the interest rate even if the existing market rate for that security goes up. Maturity premium compensates for these uncertainties over the investment horizon. This brings us to the end of learning outcome B for this reading. In the next video, we'll talk about learning outcome C, how to calculate effective annual rate. If you like this video, please do not forget to hit like and subscribe for more. You can also visit our blog at the link shown.